Novak Djokovic sent home on the eve of the Australian Open after his last-ditch legal challenge failed. Here's how today's drama unfolded.
Well, we're treating him like he's like a weapon of mass destruction at the moment.
Novak's lawyers had one job: block out the noise and convince 3 federal court judges that the immigration minister's decision to cancel Djokovic's visa was,
for different reasons, irrational or legally unreasonable.
So they went hard on the immigration minister's stated goal of not stirring up anti-vax sentiment, arguing the decision to boot Djokovic had the exact opposite effect.
It was irrational for the minister to only contemplate the prospect of the fostering of anti-vax sentiment that might accrue from Mr Djokovic playing tennis.
The Chief Justice seemed to agree.
One could see a situation in which it was plain to anyone with common sense that cancelling the visa would cause overwhelming public discord.
But Team Commonwealth argued that not cancelling a visa for fear of the consequences would be un-Australian. Yes, I'm paraphrasing a bit.
Australia must not be bound to suffer the presence of an alien for fear of what might happen if they were removed.
And in a unanimous decision, the judges sided with the Commonwealth.
The amended application to be dismissed with costs to be agreed.
Novak Djokovic will be deported.
Well, in a statement released this evening by Djokovic, he says, "I am extremely disappointed with the court ruling to dismiss my application for judicial review of the minister's decision to cancel my visa. I respect the court's ruling and I will cooperate with the relevant authorities in relation to my departure from the country. I am uncomfortable that the focus of the past weeks has been on me, and I hope that we can all now focus on the game and tournament I love." Well, joining us now is former Immigration Department Deputy Secretary Abul Rizvi. Abul, we know this is the final call with no appeal options for Djokovic, but the judges haven't yet revealed on exactly which grounds they're upholding this cancellation. What do you think clinched it?
Well, I think we need to understand the nature of the judicial review process that went on. And the judge actually made this very clear. He said the court makes no comment on the merits or the wisdom of the decision. Effectively, the power the minister had in this instance that he used only required him to check a number of technical legal boxes, and as long as he checked those, he was going to win.
So what does this mean for Novak? I mean, we're hearing he's going to be deported. How quickly is that going to happen?
Well, I suspect if he doesn't intend to lodge an appeal or seek the right to appeal to the High Court, I can't see any reason why he'd want to stay in Australia or defer departing. I suspect they will find the next flight, next convenient flight out of Australia for him.
And so what are the wider implications from this decision?
Well, that's the really fascinating issue here. Essentially what the government has done is said, if you are a non-citizen and you have strong anti-vaccination views, or indeed if you only have mild anti-vaccination views, as is the case with Mr Djokovic, and you are relatively prominent, you are not welcome in Australia. The challenge is, how does the government now put that into effect? What changes have to take place on our visa systems? What does that mean in terms of how it identifies who these anti-vaxxers around the world are, who Australia will ban? I think the government has really opened up a can of worms for itself on this.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, the Serbian president has already accused the federal government of harassing not only Novak but his family and the entire nation. What will be the diplomatic fallout from all this?
Well, I guess we're not popular in Serbia at the moment, and probably won't be for a while. I think there is some merit in what the Serbian president is saying. I think if we consider the fact of how Mr Djokovic has been treated, and if we compare that with other anti-vaxxers in Australia, who are prominent Australians who promulgate anti-vaccination views, in respect of those, the government says very little. It talks about freedom of speech, it talks about freedom of choice in respect of those people. Yet for a non-citizen, a #1 tennis player in Australia, has been booted out of the country for views that are probably significantly milder.
Abul, we've heard there may be a 3-year ban attached to this ruling. Can Novak contest that? Surely we're not going to kick him out for the next 3 Australian Opens.
Now, the ban will apply, but he is able to, next time he wants to come to Australia, I don't know whether he'll ever want to come to Australia again, but assuming he does, he will need to make an application to the minister for a waiver of that ban. And I would imagine in Mr Djokovic's circumstances, assuming the issue of anti-vaccination and vaccination is no longer around, that's a big assumption, I suppose, I suspect most ministers would waive the 3-year ban.
Well, just quickly before we go, just to clarify something you said earlier, you think there's a small window of some sort of appeal open to Djokovic?
Oh, he could only seek leave to appeal to the High Court, and that would take a substantial amount of time, and really the chances of him playing tomorrow by doing that are probably impossible.
All right.
There just is no time.
OK, Abul, we've run out of time too. Thanks so much. Always appreciate your insights.
You're welcome.
Well, much like the rest of us, former tennis player Rennae Stubbs is still processing all of this, and she joins us now. Rennae, you've just come from Melbourne Park. What's the feeling down there about this evening's decision?
Well, I think the overwhelming thing is just a little bit of sadness, to be honest. I mean, because this has really been just an overwhelming moment for Australia, for Australian Open, for the tennis players. But for the tennis players, they're happy that it's over, that a decision has been made, that we can move on now with the tournament. But overall, to be honest with you, it's just not a good look all around for everybody.
Well, the Australian Open starts tomorrow, but the schedule was only finalised at 4 p.m. And then it changed again. How disruptive is that for the players?
Well, it's not great, but to be honest, it only affects a couple of players. The players that get moved into Novak's position, you know, in the draw, and then the ones that have to move around. Certainly a lucky loser now goes into the tournament, so that person will be really happy. And I think Novak's opponent will be a much happier person playing someone other than Novak in the first round. So it only affected a couple of players. So everybody else, really, they're just in their own bubble.
Rennae, this process it's dragged out for so long. I mean, do you think it could have been handled better? Or rather, let me ask you, do you think it could have been handled any worse?
Yes to both. I think it could have been handled so much better in every respect. I think that Tennis Australia would like to go back retroactively and change a few things, decisions that they decided to put in. I think the government, you know, don't look great in this situation. I think that Novak probably would agree that also he probably could have done things a little bit differently. I think he would love to go back and take back that original Instagram post that he was coming into the country with a medical exemption. If there was one thing that he could do differently, that probably would have been it, because I think that stirred up so much sentiment against him coming into the country with the medical exemption. So nobody looks good here.
Novak's now officially out of the tournament, but ignoring the vaccination argument for a moment, what does this decision mean for the competition more generally?
Well, I mean, that's a question that I really can't answer, other than the fact that we're going to have a different champion for the first time in a while. Certainly there'll be a lot of players in there thinking, oh, I've got a chance now. But, you know, it's just not a great look. I hope that whoever wins this tournament, we're not talking about who could have won the tournament, and we really focus now on the great tennis that is ahead of us. And as Rafael Nadal said a number of years ago, there's nobody bigger than the sport, although this is definitely something that we're probably going to keep talking about for a few more days, at least.
Rennae, Novak is often described as arrogant, but you'd have to say that statement that he's released is very respectful and quite gracious. Do you think he's, to some degree, done that to try and ward against the possibility of Australia upholding that 3-year ban, that, you know, he will have the chance to come back and that will be taken into consideration?
Absolutely. I think the best thing he did was release that statement. It's a fantastic statement. He really does sounds very, very sorry for everything that's been happening. He didn't want to be the focus. Look, he's been trying to practice at the tennis centre. He's been trying to get himself prepared, but now that the decision has been made, he's got to get out and absolutely needs to worry about not being allowed into this country for the next 3 years. So I'm sure he does not want that to happen.
It's amazing what time can do sometimes. Rennae, we've really appreciated all of your input over the last year that this story seems to have been dragging out. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. At least I'm not in a car.
All good. It is a very gracious statement.
It is. I can only imagine, though, what Novak Djokovic's camp is feeling behind that statement, what they're talking about behind closed doors in the hotel. I can only imagine they'd be livid.
Yeah, I'm just hearing that the Immigration Minister, Alex Hawke, has put out a statement and he is saying that he is pleased with the decision, and I'd say he's obviously pleased with the way that Djokovic is playing this as well.
Yeah, I know one of the things the government was saying was that having Djokovic here could stoke that kind of anti-vax sentiment in the country. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Deporting him, like his defence said, could also stoke that same sentiment. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
One of the good things to come out of this is there's been a bit more focus on the refugees who are still languishing in detention in this country.
And hopefully that's where the focus stays after this story goes away.
Yep.